Hey, it's Soul, and this is the guide to jewel crafting in Midnight. Here we'll cover the feel of obtaining materials, leveling up, and specialization paths. Then we'll cover cooldown and mastery crafting, along with a few builds, then highlight some cool things jewel crafting has to offer. This is an intermediate guide that assumes you've got some experience with professions over the past few years. Use navigation to get to where you want to go. Please like this video, subscribe for more WoW coverage, and catch me where I'm live. There are a few things to point out. You can skip this if you heard it before, because I'm going to repeat it for just about every profession. Consumable goods and reagents now only have 2 quality ranks. Now this matters a bit for gear crafters, but when it comes to things like cutting gems or even prospecting, it can be a pretty big deal that creates a distinction between what I call a cooldown crafter versus a master crafter of these items. And I should explain those terms too. A cooldown crafter doesn't rely on high-level materials, tools, levels, or knowledge points beyond what's needed to learn recipes. Instead, they focus on using the concentration stat to raise the quality of an item to the next highest rank. In Midnight, with only 2 ranks, max quality is just 1 step away. Virtually all professions can apply this philosophy to create crafting characters who basically use concentration to make max quality consumables and reagents when enough is available, thus using concentration as a daily-ish cooldown mechanic. As soon as jewel crafters learn the recipes, they can immediately spend their concentration to make top-tier items like gems, albeit only a handful every few days. A player with this philosophy sees their characters more or less as tools, right? Like it's a means to an end and so on and so forth, and will primarily do their business in the auction house. I'm speculating here, but I anticipate cooldown crafters to be pretty popular, as they don't even need high-quality materials to make top-quality goods. Now there might be a drawback though, as this could actually impact the supply of materials, which might narrow the price differences in quality. We should also consider the mid to long-term effects of this kind of approach, like what will the competition be like between single-player characters and those who might roll numerous alts landing cooldowns. How many players will actually be using so many alts, and how will this all mix in with the region auction house? We'll just have to wait and see. On the other side of things, master crafters depend on building up levels and knowledge points to eventually mass-produce high-quality items and gear without limits. Now this involves the steady progression with all the weekly grinding and activities involved. This approach also falls under the philosophy of being a completionist who has fully developed their character, and you know what? That's totally cool. This is not about right or wrong gameplay. You can play however you like, it's just that this guide will make distinctions so you can come up with your own strategy without getting yourself confused with what's needed to get there. All the familiar trappings of return, from specializations to knowledge points and patron orders and concentration. A number of recipes are purchased with Artisan's Moxie. It's earned from skill ups, gaining knowledge, and fulfilling patron orders. Other recipes are discovered or dropped, and you can mouse over the info box on the recipe to find out how to get it. Moxie, by the way, it replaces Artisan's Acuity from the War Within. Moxie is also specific to a given profession, so unlike Dragonflight and the War Within, you won't be able to jump across multiple professions to consolidate a whole bunch of Moxie and then dump it into a single profession. Just about every jewel crafter will start out the same, prospecting their faces off for gems, using said gems to level, and hoping for enough excess to crush them for additional resources to skill up with. We should get into some details about how the prospecting works in Midnight. There are 4 kinds of ore to discover, and I'll reveal what gives what before any perks or benefits. In general, you'll get an assortment of gems, glass, and stone. The amount of glass and stone is basically the same regardless of the ore being used. The gems provided, though, they're distinct depending on what ore you're grinding. The common copper ore provides uncommon gems of all sorts. For my sanity, I'm just going to call these gems like green, blue, purple, and red gems. Tin provides only greens and purples, but they can drop rare quality versions of them too. By contrast, silver provides blue and red gems only, and sometimes rare quality versions of those. Finally, there's dazzling thorium, which is a rare find when mining ore, and it yields only rare gems of any of the 4 types, and includes the epic Eversong diamond, which can be cut into a special stat gem. So the rule of thumb is if you only want stone and glass, and the price of ore is exceptionally good, okay, go ahead and grind up copper. Otherwise, you probably want to focus on prospecting ore for the specific gem you want. Gem cutting has had some changes, and I think it's a bit more straightforward, where gems have quality now, meaning you don't need to have like a high-quality gem cutter as a reagent. The recipes no longer need a mix of gems to fuse into a hybrid cut, meaning the vast majority of uncommon gems, they're going to end up being used for crushing. In exchange, rare quality cuts will ask for these elemental motes found mostly from gatherers. These motes are similar to Dragonflight's Awakened reagents, as in these will be used in all sorts of other recipes, so there's bound to be a supply impact. As you level with all the prospecting and the crushing, you'll find that at level 50, you'll learn the recipes for all the rare pure stat gems. Now this is a bit of a nerf from the War Within, where we learned the pure stat gems a little bit earlier. My guess is due to how accessible high-quality gem cuts will be in Midnight, the higher skill requirement might be there to kind of make it more difficult to scale up an operation of cooldown crafters who can spit out one quality gem every 2 days before any additional levels or tools or specializations. We'll talk a bit more on that later, but the road to maxing out level from here will feel familiar for the seasoned jewel crafter, and by that, I mean it's gonna kind of suck. There's an optional reagent that can be made fairly cheaply, but I'm unable to test how close it'll take the skill level all the way to 100. So it's going to be the epic gem cuts, which are found randomly from dungeons, and gear crafting that'll max this out. Let's move on to specializations, but I'm gonna kind of skim through these because there's a bit more to talk about when I get to the different builds. Under Proficient Processor, jewel crafters will improve on prospecting, crushing, and making reagents like lenses, vials, or optional reagents. Most folks are going to focus primarily on prospecting over everything else though. The benefits include faster prospecting speed on the second tier trait, and for each ore, the chance of discovering a diamond is higher. Now keep in mind this chance is greater depending on the ore type, and it's not on the tooltip. Now as for how this contributes to the actual skill and the benefit of prospecting, I'll get to that later. Thoughtful Throughput is where all the secondary stats hang out, the most popular arguably being Multicraft, followed by Resourcefulness for patron orders and epic gear. Alluring Accessories is for gearing, managing rings, necks, and profession tools. And finally, under Glamorous Gems, we're in familiar territory. You can choose your first gem cut right away, and then you'll need to go through the motions to unlock the remaining cuts via knowledge points. Jewel crafting tools depend on what your production's going to be. Just about every jewel crafter will want a resourcefulness tool to run patron orders at the very least, so they can earn easy moxie this way, and it's helpful as a gear crafter. Most everyone else will want multi-craft in hopes of producing extra gems or other product. If you want a chance at more materials, your best bet is to, just roll another jewel crafting alt as opposed to speccing for ingenuity. Now let's get to the builds, some of which are super straightforward. Aside from investing into the secondary stat of your choice, each build can pretty much live in a single tree. For master crafters, gearing is easy enough to understand, just choose the path and go all the way down. Recipes are learned from the specializations themselves, from vendor purchases, or instance drops that can be traded or sold in the auction house. Ideally, you'll want to specialize into one of these at a time. Going the profession tool path is especially involved as all the recipes here are purchased with Moxie. I'd argue it's a better idea to pick up the rare recipes before the epics, as those are easier to make and still provide the very important skill bonus for crafters. Folks with a lot of cooldown crafters might be interested in these if they have the coin. Going for the basic or optional reagents, we'll have master crafters going down the proficient processor tree and then maxing out whatever's their fancy. It'll be very useful for, say, the mass crafter of vials, but for a cooldown crafter, it's almost totally useless. Gem cutting is where things get kind of weird. Well, okay, not in a bad way, it's just kind of weird, and I'll explain. Cutting gems, as you know, it's a pretty involved process. You gotta take the ore and prospect it, then you gotta crush stuff and then cut it into a thing. The process is already a bit more simplified, and at the same time, cooldown crafting has a distinct advantage despite being only able to produce cuts like every other day. Speaking broadly about these profession changes, there's a consequence when there are now only 2 ranks of quality and multiple stages of production that result in an end product that also has only 2 ranks of quality. It means the earlier stages of production, they don't matter as much. The specializations for prospecting, they do offer some perks like a chance of obtaining more gems and slightly reduced concentration costs, but one can definitely afford to not care much about having the very best tools or even being on top of earning knowledge points each week, when they could just prop up a few more alts to make more gem cuts or vials or whatever with a fairly low investment. I can see one character who does all the prospecting and at least 1 alt per gem cut of the pure stats. Now keep this in mind. Trying to set up an alt army quickly at the start of an expansion, it's probably a very risky idea, given how materials will likely go at a premium for a while. Alright, so what sorts of cool stuff can jewel crafters make? Under optional reagents, they can add an embellishment that doubles the strength of another jewel crafting embellishment. It could be great if the other reagents and procs are good too, so let's take a closer look. The prismatic iris deals damage, and like the other embellishments we'll see, the potency is increased for every unique gem color worn. In Midnight, all rings and amulets, crafted or not, they already include a socket, and there's a radiant jewel binder item you can buy from the Great Vault vendor that adds a socket to the helmet, the wrist, and the belt, making for 6 total possible slots. Although I should point out there's a very rare ring from the Keldanos raid that has an additional slot in exchange for secondary stats. There's some embellished gear to look at, of course, and keep in mind the double effect optional reagent that I mentioned just earlier. There's a ring that summons a helpful buff, and a particularly special ring that provides a lot of secondary stats. It looks pretty impressive and brings back some Dragonflight vibes where there was a very powerful amulet that folks used pretty much the whole way through. As for the necks themselves, there's one with a throughput proc and one with an on-use defensive. And of course we have a round of decor shown on screen, including this very attractive statue. I'm sure in the near future I'll see this at the head of a ship or hanging above someone's bed. Yeah, I went there. And that's the guide. I hope it was useful. Please like this video, subscribe for more WoW coverage, catch me live, and I'll catch you later. Stay safe, stay healthy, and stay breezy.